Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you know that this is my series in which I use tarot and oracle cards to help me explore topics related to living the intentional life. And this time, before we get into this Tree of Life spread. Now, this Tree of Life spread is a spread that I've been using since the previous lunar cycle. And it's a very deep, a very intense spread. It's a spread that's rich with symbolism, rich with history. And if you want to see a full walkthrough of the spread alone, to see what the pieces are and how they work together, I've got a full video on that on my channel. So I'll put a card up here so you can, if you want to, hop over to the video explaining the spread itself and then come back and watch this one. Now this is a two-part video, right? I split these into two parts because, again, this is a very deep, a very symbol-rich and intense spread. So it asks for some time, and rather than doing one immensely long video, I'm splitting it up into two different ones. But before we get into this week's video, I'd like to bring up a question, a topic, something for our consideration. And you know more than I do what the title of this video is. I haven't landed on a title for it yet, but it looks to me like the entry point, the doorway to this spread, has to do with overwhelm. Yeah? What does overwhelm mean for you? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I think we would all agree that overwhelm is not necessarily a good thing, not a comfortable thing, shall we say, not a joyous and free feeling, right? But is it only negative circumstances that cause overwhelm? Does that question make sense to you? Is it only things that are bad that cause our feeling of overwhelm? Is it possible to have so much of a good thing that we become overwhelmed as well? I believe it is also the case. Yeah? Sometimes there are so many good things that are happening with us that we get overwhelmed and we feel at a loss to be able to engage with all of those wonderful, joyous, delightful things that we've wanted to participate in, and yet because of the sheer quantity of those wonderful positive things, we can feel overwhelmed from them as well. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever had the feeling that there were so many wonderful things in your life that you just feel, we could feel awe, we could feel deep gratitude, yes, gratitude, deep gratitude, but we can also feel that overwhelm of there's too much for me to participate in at this time. There are also times when those feelings of overwhelm are instigated by very negative things, things that we don't want in our lives. And perhaps we'll feel that overwhelm not by sheer quantity, but by the intensity of those negative things. Yeah, a very intensely positive singular thing probably might not be as overwhelming as a whole bunch of really good things, right? But on the negative side, just one really, really uncomfortable negative experience could be overwhelming, right? Although, I don't know, if you've ever given birth to a baby, I have not. If you have ever given birth to a baby, that could have been one singular event that caused joy and overwhelm at the same time. Okay, so I'm not going to separate the good from the bad in that sense. Yeah, I suppose there are times when something is so wonderful that it can be overwhelming as well, all on its own. But I think generally, we get overwhelmed by quantity in the positive sense and by intensity on the negative side. But there are also times when we're in the middle, right? Where there are some good and there's some bad, some unwanted, and we just get overwhelmed. And I think that's what we are being drawn into and through in this week's spread. I think the portal to this week's spread is going to be overwhelm. And we'll see together in just a moment. So what am I going to do? I am going to show you the entire spread, and then we'll break it down into bits, right? If you've been following along, you know how I do this spread. Yeah. After we look at the spread really briefly, I'll look at the upright pointing triangle, the supernal triangle, and then the first downward pointing triangle, the emotional triangle or the ethical triangle. And then we'll stop. And then in video 2, part 2, we'll look at the second downward pointing triangle, the etheric triangle or the psychological triangle, and then we'll read the whole spread in 3 different ways. So we're going to start off with the whole spread, and let me show you that spread right now. So that was the full spread, and I decided to try a new location for taking photos of the spread this time, and I think I'm going to go back to my previous location. The photo looks really, really yellow to me. But there we go. We've got the spread. But still you can see the decks, right? You can see that there were 4, count them, 4 decks in play in this one spread. And if you're curious about the names of the decks and the names of the creators, there will be a short video, short clip at the end of this video that will give you that information. And as usual, in the description box below, there will be links for you to go and check out 3 of the 4 decks, which are still available. Yeah, there was one deck that is way out of print, and I'm very sorry about that. But the other 3 decks are available. Look at them, follow the links, purchase one or all of them. I think they're just wonderfully brilliant decks, and I highly recommend them. So there was the spread again. And you saw that those cards, you noticed that one card was duplicated, right? Did you notice that? We'll take a look at that at the end of this video and the beginning of the next. But we're going to start right now with the supernal triangle. Now the triangle, the 3 cards that are at the very, very top of the spread. A logical place to start, right? Here we go. So that was the supernal triangle, +1. Yeah, there was one card that looked a little different, right? The 4th card at the bottom. That is taking the place of a Sephirah, which actually is missing. Now that is the space of the void. That's Dot. And we'll be looking at that card when we read the whole spread in the lightning path. So we're not going to look at that one card right now. But we are going to look at the other 3. We're going to start at the top with Kether, down in the lower right with Chokmah, and then in the lower left with Bina. Yeah, we have again Kether, Chokmah, Bina. In Kether we had the King of Discs reversed. In Chokmah we had the 9 of Wands upright, and then in Bina we had the Devil, yes, the Devil, upright as well. Now, if you know how I use this deck, if you've been following along, you know that I always shuffle in reversals when I riffle shuffle this deck. Yeah, I cut it in half, turn half of it around, and riffle shuffle. And then cut it in half, turn half of it around, and riffle shuffle. So I'm always shuffling in reversals and reversals of reversals and reversals of reversals of reversals, etc. And so having only one card reversed is interesting. Having that be in the first spot, having that be in Kether is super interesting. So that's where we're going to begin. Now we're going to begin in Kether. And Kether, if you know the Tree of Life spread, that is the crown. Not the crown chakra. I was about to say crown chakra. The crown of the tree. This is where the Ein Sof, the unknowable infinity, is indicated, not expressed, not housed, not limited to, but this is where we consider the Ein Sof. This is the place where, not even a place, this is a subject, a topic that is beyond our mind's comprehension. It's so far away, so large and unmanifested that it is impossible for the human brain to comprehend. Now, the eternal nature that we are, that is having this temporary human experience, can comprehend that. That eternal nature that we are is indivisible from the universal divine, whatever name we want to give to that, whether it's God, Great Mother, Gaia, the universe, consciousness, whatever we want to call that mind of the one. The eternal natures that we are eternally indivisible from that. However, as we are here in these beautiful bodies that we're co-creating, and these beautiful human brains that we are co-creating, and the human egoic conscious mind that we are also co-creating, that mind is incapable of comprehending or even feeling the possibility of comprehending Kether and what that represents. It's the arousal of desire for the potential of creation. It's not the creation. It's not the potential for creation. It's not the desire for the potential of creation. This is the arousal of that desire for the potential for creation. Yeah? This is the ultimate pre-creation of the universe stance of the one. This is perhaps the way I describe it. And if you've been watching me, you know what I'm about to say. It's the way that sometimes our body moves before we notice that there's an itch there. Yeah? Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever noticed your body moving and thought what's going on? And then you notice that there might be something there, and then you notice that there's an itch, and then you say, oh, okay, then you go to scratch it. The way I think of Kether, it's that moment before you notice that your body is moving. Yeah? So, what is there in Kether for us? Here we have the King of Discs, reversed. And the King of Discs, I forgot to get the cards for us. The King of Discs, here in reversal, here we go. We got this beautiful card. The King of Discs has a disc in her hands, and he, she, they are standing on a disc, and there's a disc up in the sky, right? This king is especially upright in connection with all of the planes of the universe. Yeah, the ethereal of the top sphere, the physically present moment sphere in his hand, and then below, the underworld, the unconscious. This king is connected to all spheres and is able to traverse all spheres when this king is in the fullness of his, her, their power. Now, let me show it to you upright. I mean, this is just a gorgeous card. Those colors, the body on that guy, just a beautiful card. And a beautiful figure of a king. And this king points to Taurus, which is the domicile of Venus, from which the fixed Earth's vital attributes enter our world. Yeah, fixed Earth's vital attributes enter our world through Venus in Taurus. And so this king is the one who enjoys the beauty of and the bounty of the physical universe, and is able to connect and join and revel in and appreciate all of that because of Venus in Taurus. And this king can absorb a lot of stuff. This king has, as we would say in Korean, a big rice bowl. Now, 밥그릇 크다. 밥그릇이 커요. He has a big rice bowl, which means there is potential for a lot of contents there, and potential for a lot of abilities as well. However, this card came up reversed for us here, right? So this king can absorb a lot, but if he's thrown off his good nature, if he gets overwhelmed, if there is too much being poured into that rice bowl, this king can become the bull of Taurus, right? The relentless, stubborn, very opinionated one. Now, this king can be the frustrated, angry bull in a china shop if overwhelmed by things, if pushed too hard, if given too much of a burden, if given too much of anything. He can begin to resent time with loved ones. He can begin to resent time with the work he, she, or they are doing. He can get resentful over the demands for more from people that expect more from him, her, or them. Now, even if those things that they're expecting are wonderful, beautiful, creative, jubilant things, if there's too much, then that explosion within blows the Tauran apart. And he can become thoroughly destructive of everything and everyone in order to indulge his impulses of clearing out space for him or her or their selves. And we remember that image of the bull in the china shop, yeah? There's not enough space for the bull to get through that area delicately. And so maybe the bull will take a step or two in and then gets really frustrated and start clearing out a path for him, her, or their selves to be able to move, right? So that we have that potential here in the King of Discs reversed. That potential of being overwhelmed by even beautiful, lovely things like the stuff you find in a china shop. But with too narrow a path, with somebody pulling at you saying, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go, the bull comes untethered and unleashed and destructive, potentially very destructive. Now, every time I lay this spread out, the question I ask is, how can we live more intentionally in the coming week? And I don't think this card is here to tell us to become the bull in the china shop. I don't think this card is here to tell us to start wreaking havoc to clear out space for ourselves, even though we may want to. I think this card is here as a heads up. There is this potential on the horizon. You don't know it yet, you're not aware of it yet, or maybe it's here and you haven't quite given it enough attention. And if you don't give it enough attention, then the dire consequences are more than possible, right? So we go from this space of, and I don't want to call it space because this is pre-space. Space has not even been created yet in Kether. This is the non-physical potential that is itching to perhaps to be given notice to, right? And so we move into Hokmah. And in Hokmah, we have this card, the Nine of Wands. The Nine of Wands, you have this beautiful card of a volcano in midst of eruption. We've got the 9 wands up front, in front, at the front, and down lower. English, I can speak it a little bit. We have the wands in front and at the bottom of the card, right? And a little bit behind those wands, a little bit in closer to the center, we have a cave with 2 creatures in there. And one of them, and they're not natural friends, they're actually natural enemies. And one of them is the fox, and one of them is the, I forgot what the other creature is, and it's hard to see here. I think there's like a fox and a goat here together. But yeah, these 2 beings are not natural friends. And this is basic, a little bit like the card in Rider-Waite-Smith, a Waite-Smith deck, which was drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith, where we see the figure bandaged up, right? They've taken some hits, they've been through a bit of a beating, but they're still standing. They're leaning on one staff, and there's a wall of 8 other staffs behind them, and we get the idea of resilience and I'm still standing and having a protective border there, of having defenses up and ready, right? Here we've got something similar to that, but with a different twist. And the Nine of Wands points to the Sagittarius decadent of Sagittarius. Yeah, it's supersized Sagittarius. And its subruler Jupiter, from which the mutable aspect of mutable fire, vital attributes enter our world. Now, so we're coming from fixed earth, reversed, so that fixedness is kind of cracking apart, and we're moving into mutable fire. We're finding a path forward. We're cleaning up and moving forward, right? And so here we have Jupiter's double whammy influence, which brings larger than life situations. We may want to take shelter, even if it's with our natural enemy here. Just like these 2 creatures here have done in that cave. Yeah, they found a cave, they found that somebody that they're not normally well associated with in that cave, and they said, well, it's better in here than out there. So, ducking for shelter, even if it's with somebody that you're not necessarily comfortable with. But it's better in there than out there, right? They may feel jinxed. Now, they may feel like the gods are against them at this time. But they know that to survive this upheaval, they're going to need a shift of consciousness. They're going to need to change the way that they think. They may need a time out to recover as well from the beating up that they took before they were able to find that shelter. Now, recover from the stress, from that, even if it wasn't the full experience of the wrath of the volcano, still, they got stressed out by seeing the sky starting to come aflame with stuff shooting out of the mountain. So we may want to restore our vital forces. So if we find a spot for safety, it would be wise for us to take shelter in it. Again, even if somebody that we may not find particularly our best friends is in there with us or comes in to join us. And this is an interesting thing. This is in the space of wisdom, right? This is Hokmah. This is the top of the father pillar. This is where we receive, this is where the contents from Kether begins to take some kind of expression. It's an expression that we can just begin to perceive, but we can't get our hands on it because it's so diffuse. It's like a plasma field, and a boundless plasma field. It's the boundless impulse of creation, in fact. It's also the intuitive insight of the soul that is still unable to be grasped. Yeah, we get these insights sometimes from the unconscious, from the soul, and there's something there, but we can't quite place it. We can't quite get a hold of it, right? There's this ethereal something there, and that's what's here. That's what this is expressing. It is yang energy. It is active, energetic, but we can't grasp it again. And the thing that we can't grasp here quite is that trouble is a coming. And that trouble could be from in here or it could be from out there. And because that trouble is a coming, we may want to find a little bit of shelter for ourselves. We may want to duck into something, in somewhere and gather ourselves together to be able to express our Sagittarian natures. We all have all the natures of all signs of the zodiac within us. And this Sagittarian nature, attribute, the positive aspect of the Sagittarian attribute right now is not the time to be using it. Right now it's the time for us to duck in, take shelter, maybe gather our resources together before we're able to move out again into the world with that clear, mutable fire energy of a Sagittarian. So, we will need a shift in consciousness. We will need a new perspective in order to be able to do that. So, we are here in this, I don't know really what's going on. I feel something's going on, and it doesn't feel all that comfortable or all that safe. And so, let me find a safe space for myself to take shelter, even if it's with somebody that I'm not comfortable with. And that somebody that we're not comfortable with may be us, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be a whole other human being. It could be aspects of ourselves that are making us feel uncomfortable, right? So we find a safe haven for ourselves to shift our consciousness, shift the way we are perceiving, and perhaps find an opportunity to relate with that other being, whether that other being is a whole different person or an aspect of ourselves, so that we can move into Binah. And this is an interesting thing, yeah? Binah, what is Binah? Binah is understanding. Before we get to the devil, Binah is understanding. Binah is the top of the mother pillar, the pillar of severity, the we're going to get real here kind of severity. This Binah Sephirah is the one that receives the energy, that diffuse plasmatic energy from Chokmah, and begins to give it shape. It's the womb of creation. So it receives that energy and gives it some limitations, some boundaries. It's not a physical shape yet, but there's, and it's not graspable by our hands yet, but there's some kind of a container for it here. And in that container, it's not a limiting thing, but it's an energizing thing. Because in Binah, that energy goes into like a house of mirrors where that energy can bounce off of things and refract and become more diverse, more spectacular, kind of like the cells do inside the womb of a human being, right? Those cells divide and become different things. One little cell that starts off divides and becomes hair and becomes bones and becomes eyes and becomes toenails and becomes livers, a liver, becomes liver cells. All that diversity. Yeah? That's what happens in Binah. So, in that space, we have the devil. And this is a beautiful card, right? We see the androgen being at the top, both male and female, and two beings below, rather elderly looking, one male looking presenting figure and one female presenting figure, and they're being joined together by the androgyne above. And there's this beautiful peacock spread above the head of the androgyne. The androgyne has two founts pouring out of their breasts. One of them is a font of fire, one of them is a font of water. Perfect pairings, very alchemical. On the arms of the androgyne, we have both solve and coagula. Yeah? Dissolve and recombine or coagulate. And this card is pointing us towards, again, Sagittarius. Yeah? This card points to Sagittarius, which is the domicile of Jupiter. We just saw that in the previous card, from which these mutable fire attributes enter our world. So we've got these two mutable fire cards as responses to the reversed fixed earth card above. So on the one side, we had the get to know your neighbor, whether that neighbor is an external being or part of yourself, take shelter, change of consciousness. And here in the devil, what do we get? Well, the devil is also has a letter, a Hebrew letter, samek, associated with it, which is the card of a support or a prop, the letter of a support or a prop, something to lean on, something to support us, right? It's also the shape of a ring, like a wedding ring. It's the shape of cycles as well, like the Ouroboros is the shape of a samek. It's that circle of life, circle of seasons. So we have those ideas of repetitions and seasons and movings and comings, and it's also algis in the runes. Yeah, the 15th letter in the rune is algis, which is very interestingly the horned deity of which is associated with the elk in Celtic lore. So the horned deity, which is not the horned deity of evil, destruction, sin, temptation, corruption. No, it is the deity of protection, the deity of openness and happiness and life force. So just thinking this far, what did we have? We had Kether, which was this potential for this raging bull in a china shop, moving into, okay, so let's take some shelter with Sagittarius, get our perspective going, get a little bit more comfortable, get ourselves refreshed, revitalized, and then we're here with protection. Remember, we found protection in the Nine of Wands. We have protection here. We have openness, happiness, life force here is revitalized. Kind of like those two spouts of elemental energy from the chest of the androgyne. Yeah, the fire and the water are pouring forth in bounty. There's a joining here of a marriage, the wedding ring of Samek. The alchemical wedding is indicated here. We also have the idea of Satan, which can be seen as an aspect of Sophia. We could perhaps even understand that Satan was a misunderstanding of Sophia, which is divine wisdom, the goddess powers that have come to be the creatrix of the physical universe as sent forth and with the co-creative powers of the divine one. So the creatrix comes down and creates the physical universe and is here in this material universe as a constant creating, life-giving force. And we misperceive that feminine aspect as an evil aspect, as the horned one, as a Satan figure. But perhaps this is Sophia. Perhaps having lost consciousness in this physical realm, being distracted by all the diversity of this physical wonder. It could also be ourselves and other, dissolving and coagulating, solve e coagula, yeah, to merge with each other by first dissolving and then coming together as one. Yeah, it's the syzygy, the two that turn into one and regenerate, the union of opposites. Anima, animus, yin, yang, yang in Korean. Christ, Sophia, Osiris, Iris, the two that join and become one, as indicated by those two people down there. We could get that too, which would be one way for us to regain our power, right? Remember, we ducked into the cave and maybe there was that other that is not that we don't feel is our natural companion, that seems to be our natural enemy. And here we have the joining of the two. We also have Sagittarian power here. The power of desire when focused is unstoppable. And to focus that, we need to get aspects of self, or us with our partner, together into one. But that power can still be dangerously overwhelming if it's not used with, if it's not used by an individuated, self-actualized, evolved being. If it's used with the divided aspect before these two came together, it was used by two people or one person split and in conflict and in and immature and not fully realized, then that power can become very destructive. But if used by a cohesive, united being, that power, again, unstoppable, but creative, loving, joyful, powerful energy can be expressed through that being. So in this supernal triangle, we've got a lot of very dense information, right? We've got that potential, that feeling of overwhelm, of burdened by people from the outside, but also perhaps burdened by ourselves. And so we move into that, we find shelter, and in that shelter, we discover that there is an other there, which is not we don't feel like they're our friends. We feel like they're our opposite. They're our enemy, just go with enemy. But we realize it's better in here than out there, right? So we stay there and we discover a new perspective. And in that new perspective, we come into this. Yeah? With that new perspective, this Sagittarius, we can move into this Sagittarius where those two beings in the cave can come together, can unite, can dissolve and coagulate into one fullness of a being that is unstoppably powerful. But we don't want to use that power until we are actualized. We actualize ourselves. We've individuated. We have come into the fullness of self. Does that make sense? That's what this supernal triangle, I think, is pointing us to for this week. That even in that overwhelm is a result of an incredible amount of power, right? So this supernal triangle is teaching us what to do in the presence of that much power. And the warning that it could become overwhelming, we could become destructive. So instead, I'm solve equigulating. I'm solve equigulate. You know what I'm trying to say. I hope so. I'm dissolving and bringing it back together. So then we come into the crucible of the cave and we notice what's there, the contents that are there. We get our new perspective, we find our shelter, we take a moment, we try to clear ourselves of that sense of being jinxed by the universe, and then in the Devil card, we dissolve and come together to discover our power. Because we are our own prop. That thing, that being which seemed like our enemy is actually our prop, our samek. And united, we become that one, the unity, the bond, the marriage bond of self with self or self with other. And that becomes a very powerfully individuated being. Okay, so that's where we're starting. And so, friends, we're going to move on to the first downward pointing triangle, the emotional triangle or the ethical triangle. And here it is. Here we are in the ethical triangle or the emotional triangle. And we begin in the upper right with the thunderstruck tower in Chesed. And then we go to the left with the Seven of Discs in Gebra. And then we move down to the center with Isis Unveiled or the Empress in Tiferet. So that's the order that we're going to be reading these cards in. The fourth spot is the Thunderstruck Tower, and that's where we'll begin. That's in Chesed. And what is Chesed? Chesed is kindness. It's loving kindness. It's the love of self and other and the divine. It's that loving kindness that we hear so much of from the Buddhist meditation traditions. It's also the place where divine love is felt and expresses itself into the universe. This is also where we get our eager and ardent desire both to move to and to do things or to move away from and flee things. Yeah, it's that eager and ardent desire to or from. It's also the place where cosmic laws begin to come into formation. Things like love and joy and peace and goodness and fairness and harmony and well-being and gratitude. All of those divine cosmic law states are here coming into form in Chesed. And so in that spot, we had a very interesting card. Yeah, we had the Thunderstruck Tower, which in this deck is a Thunderstruck Pyramid, right? The top is being blown off, and these two figures, very similar to the Waite Smith deck, for example, and also Terre de Marseille, where we have two figures generally escaping a tower that's being blown apart, right? We got two figures here. And the Thunderstruck Tower points to Jupiter in Capricorn in this deck. We got Jupiter back again, interestingly. Now, Jupiter in Capricorn. Now, this is only in this series of decks. So I'm following the tradition that was laid out by who was it? By Papas. No, I'm sorry, not Papas. What am I saying? By the Comte de Saint-Germain, who created one of the first Egyptian tarot decks in the late 19th century and wrote a book. And in that book, the Comte de Saint-Germain gives astrological associations to the cards, and the one that the Comte de Saint-Germain gave to this one is Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter is not naturally in Capricorn. Jupiter is usually in places like Sagittarius and Pisces, but here there's Jupiter. Now this tower also points to the Hebrew letter Ayin, which is the idea of eye, like the all-seeing eye of the divine, right? Which is good for Chesed, divine mercy, the divine light of the divine eye. We also have the rune Sowilo for the sun, the brightness, the happiness, the joy. Interesting associations with the tower card, right? When we usually think of the tower as being a destruction or upheaval or cracking apart and breaking down in other decks. Here, what do we have? Well, we do have that idea of moving toward ruin due to pride, foolish ventures, or voluntary mistakes that you reap what you will sow. That is one set of attributions for this card. But there are other ones too. There are ideas of fighting for higher principles here. A warning not to dissipate our energies, to keep our energies focused, to save our energies for constructive pursuits rather than spreading them all over the place. Yeah? We want to release our undesirable instincts, though. Yeah, we want to get to allow those impulsive feelings that will attract failure to move freely out of our experience. We don't want to fight them. We don't want to repress them. We want to let them go, right? We also want to know that our constructive efforts will give us positive results. We want undaunted courage in this card. Yeah, we want to modify our inner conflicts. Remember that those conflicts that we're speaking of in the upper triangle, the supernal triangle, those conflicts that we might want to find a union for, solve et coicula. So we want to modify those inner conflicts here as well. And apply our creative energies to be able to move forward, to be able to crack out of the shelter that we have found, perhaps, in the Nine of Wands. So here, after we've gotten ourselves together, we want to break out of that shelter, I believe, in this card. To see clearly outside of our protective environment and work for our principles. Yeah? Release our undesirable instincts and keep our energy focused and constructive, and use it to pursue the things that we want to move in the direction of. That our love will be able to overcome all negativity that we might contain within or may come towards us from outside. Now, this is the powerful love of Hesed, of divine love, of the love of our eternal natures, not the romantic kind of, oh, I love you kind of thing, but the powerful love that we were born as, if that makes sense. And that powerful love now is ready to be released in the cracking open of this tower. Right? And then we move right into this card, this interesting card, the Seven of Discs. And the Seven of Discs, it's just 7 discs. And this card in this deck points to Mercury, which resides in both Gemini and Virgo, from which mutable air and earth's attributes enter the world. Now, we have mutable fire up above us, but here we've got mutable air and mutable earth moving into the world through Gemini and Virgo as the homes of Mercury. And an interesting thing is, when I see this distribution of coins in this particular set of decks, the Egyptian decks, the first thing I think of when I see this is the geomantic figure, Laetitia. Do you know geomancy? Well, if you don't, this is not the place to get into it, but it's a way of divining the present and the future. It's a divinatory tool that is based on using a little bit of arithmetic and also astrology together in a very interesting set of patterns of dots. Combining elements and astrology, it's fascinating and something that I've studied a little bit. And I've studied enough for my eye to be drawn to these kinds of figures. And this figure is Laetitia, which is the rune. It's not a rune, it's not a figure. It's the geomantic figure for joy. And it represents quick and ephemeral states, things that are not solid or founded or stable, but are quick. They're ephemeral, they're not solid, but they're good, and they're in good spirits, and they're joyful. So this is a figure that is very beneficial for things like planning for the future, planning events, for celebrations, any kind of upward motion, the rising. But it's not a great figure when it comes to things that require stability or hard work or groundedness or secrecy. This thing sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like a little bit like the tower in the Lenormand decks, but it's different. And again, it's ephemeral. Perhaps like this tower is also ephemeral because it's being cracked open, right? So this Laetitia idea is ephemeral and quick joy and good spirits, good for planning, good for playing, good for celebration, good for all that good stuff. And it's also associated with Jupiter. And we've noticed a lot of Jupiter in this tree of life spread this week so far, right? We had Jupiter in Sagittarius in the upper triangle, the supernal triangle. We just had Jupiter in Capricorn. And here we've got this scent of Jupiter wafting through the Seven of Discs, which is associated with Mercury in this deck. And it's a card for high fortune coming to us because of our own personal efforts. Now, I haven't told you what Gevra is, have I? What is Gevra? Gevra is on the pillar of severity. It's the core of the pillar of severity. It's the card of judgment and limitation, but which can be seen as harsh and negative, but can also be very positive. Yeah, chesed, again, it's very effusive. It's large. It's broad. It has no boundaries. It has no form, really. In Gevurah, we get some boundaries put up. We get walls. We get structure put up here. Now, so Gevurah, in all of its judgment, in all of its limitation, kind of Saturnian, it's also acting in concert with Chesed to form reality into a shape, to start giving a shape to the raw clay of formation of material reality. It's the left hand that meets the right hand to smash things together and give them shape. Now, because Gevurah and Chesed you can think of as the hands of the tree of life, the things that start forming stuff. And so, when we form things, we sometimes cut stuff away to give clearer shape to what is there, right? And that's what we have in Gevurah. So it can be seen as harsh as you're getting rid of stuff, you're cutting stuff away, but it can also be that we're giving clarity, we're giving boundaries, we're giving limitation, which can also be a very positive thing. And so in that limitation, we find our success due to our own efforts, which were indicated in that tower card right here. Achievement is here. Progress which follows a conflict. The conflict of the breaking apart of the tower. The conflict that we started to notice up there in the supernal triangle. Now we have some progress flowing forth. It reminds us that our thoughts are going to affect what happens, yeah? Like Letitia, our positive, joyful thoughts are going to bring success. Sad thoughts might bring something else. Angry thoughts might bring something else altogether. It also reminds us that the positive weeds out the negative thoughts. Yeah? The positive thoughts will push out the negative thoughts so that they can fall off the cliff where they belong. It's a call to service, to finding solace in serving others as well. Yeah? And as we serve others, we can convert weakness into strength. We can convert our lack of form into form. We can allow discord to fade as we discover our faith here in this card, which is a wonderful thing to do. Coming from where we were at the top, and we've moved through this thunderstruck tower, and we begin to find our faith, we get to give our attention to our positive thoughts and allowing those negative ones to fall. We can point to the quick and ephemeral nature that though they have of joy, of celebration, of faith that we're moving towards our success. And then we move into the heart, Tifreth. Tifreth is the heart of the tree of life. It's connected to every one of the other Sephirah. All of the Sephirah are connected here to this Sephirah. It's the Sephirah of beauty, of glory. From here, creation flowers forth into form. And this is the hub of transformation. This is the place where force is translated into form, and form is translated back into force. Yeah, as the energy moves down the tree of life, it moves from force into form here. But then when the energy starts moving back up, it moves from form back into force. So this is that transmutational hub of the tree of life. One of the transmutational hubs of the tree of life. And again, it's a beautiful one of glory, of potential transcendence and potential imminence, into material incarnation. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket. So here what do we have here? We have a creative card here, which is perfect, right? We have Isis Unveiled or the Empress. Now here in this deck, Isis Unveiled, the Empress points to Venus, which resides in both Taurus and Libra. We've got another Tauran echo here, from which fixed Earth and cardinal air's vital attributes enter our world. Now with fixed Earth up there in the reversed King of Discs in a very uncomfortable spot. And here we have a much more comfortable Venus in Taurus and Libra representation. Now the Isis Unveiled card, the card number 3 is also associated with the Hebrew letter Gimel, which is the camel or the rope. Now the thing which carries us through the desert, or that which binds the rope. It's the benefactor, which is walking towards the one in need, the weak, of Daleth, which is the next Hebrew letter. And Gimel is also the homophone for the word that means to nourish until completely ripe, like giving fertilizer to your plants so that they will grow until they are ripe and ready for harvest. The 3 dissolves the conflict of the 2 and creates harmony in Hebrew mysticism. So here we also have the harmony, the Libran harmony in Gimel as well. But we also have a very interesting paired rune in Thurisaz. Thurisaz is the rune of a thorn, of power, of protection, defense and overcoming obstacles. It's to wish for things. Now, this card in the book written for the deck created by the Comte de Saint-Germain, the later Count de Saint-Germain, says that this is a card to wish for things possible and to create them. It's to wish for the impossible and to prepare for one's ruin. What does that mean? So we wish for things that are possible, that we believe in, and they will manifest. However, we wish for things that we do not believe in, that we believe are impossible, and we will move directly towards our ruin. So it's a card here of be careful of what you wish for, be careful of where we put our focus. Now, we want to have a very positive, faithful focus for our energy, or else we're going to be focusing on disruption and crumbling. And so in other books which give meanings for these cards, we have the idea of marriage or action here. We have actions and reactions in the Empress Isis Unveiled card. We have success in creative pursuits, which was also indicated by Saint-Germain if we keep our focus on the things that we believe in. We have mind over matter, that thoughts do become things. That's that creative empress force, right? The union of minds, as in Libra, the union of minds, social activity, mental and social pursuits are possible here. The line of least resistance is also indicated. But, more than that, I think the idea of focusing on those things which we believe are possible, that we have faith in, that we can trust, focusing on those things that we want to create and we believe in, will give us that potential for creation. That a harmonious mind will give us more power as creators in the world. So we have that. We went from the tower, the thunderstruck tower, where we have to keep our mind focused on our principles, to not dissipate our energy, to save it for constructive pursuits, to remember that our positive thoughts will push away the negative and that our love will paralyze evil. And then we move into that ephemeral potential for joy and planning and creation in the Seven of Discs, where we realize that we can overcome physical resistance and afflictions. Our positive thinking will lead to our achievement. And so here, that's emphasized in the fact that we want to give our attention to those things we believe, because that will be what will lead in the direction that we want as people who are living intentional lives. I mean, that is the core essence of what an intentional life is, right? Keeping our attention on those things we believe that we want to create and that we know are possible for us, and we open ourselves to that power of intention and we move forward with it. And we'll find success that way. Our minds can find union here as well, just like we found union in that devil card above. So this is a very interesting layout of cards, right? We have a lot of echoes back and forth, like the King of Discs echoed here in the Isis Unveiled. Isis Unveiled is also echoing the devil card of the union of minds, right? It's also echoing the Seven of Discs and the Thunderstruck Tower. It's all of those elements, I think, are being pulled together here in this, which is perfect because this is where everything is pulled together in the sixth Sephirah, in Tiferet, so that it can translate into the next triangle, which is the psychological triangle or the etheric triangle, which is what we will start the next video with. So friends, we are here at the end of the first part of this two-part series reading of this spread. So friends, if you are still here, hit that thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you got something out of it and it'll draw more eyes to the channel. Remember, in just a moment, there will be a short clip giving you the names of these decks and the creators. Take a look at that. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit that alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. And if you want, and comment below. I would love to hear from you. What do you think of this so far? Is this making sense? Does anything ask for more clarification from you? I would love to hear from you. And also, if you want a reading from me, there will be my email address in the description box below. Shoot me an email and we'll work out a reading for you, whatever kind of reading you want. Big, small, fast, long, about any topic. It's all up to you. We'll figure it out together. So friends, now I will put a card up here for you to hop over to part 2 if you are ready to do that. There will also be a link to part 2 in the description box below. So friends, here we are. Get ready for part 2. And until we meet again in part 2, I wish you, as always, love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.